The Oxford interview process lasted 2 days and filled me with a mixture of exhilaration, exhaustion and fear. Those 2 days were the culmination of an entire year's worth of work, and for me, everything was at stake and everything was on the line. My future was in my hands and it felt tenuous. So I want to share with you today the preparation that I did for the Oxford interview and what I think worked so that you can take it through. And if you're lucky enough to have received an offer to interview yourself, then perhaps these will help you. I think they will. These tips are going to be about before and during the interview process, and this is what I did. It's based on my personal experience. It was a unique experience in my life, one that I will treasure forever, and if you enjoy this video and you find it useful, I would ask you to do me a huge favor and hit the like and subscribe button, because that tells me to keep making more videos. All right, let's get into the tips. Okay, my first tip is to do lots and lots of practice interviews. Now, luckily, I went to one of the worst schools, well, that's not the lucky thing. I went to one of the worst schools in the country, a worst secondary school. So luckily, I managed to get out of it for sixth form. So when I hit 16, 17, I transferred and I went to a really good school called St. Martin's. That was one of the best things I did, was to get out of a toxic environment, an environment where people weren't equipped to help you through the Oxford or Cambridge interview process. They simply weren't. People just didn't get into those sorts of universities at my first school. But St. Martin's, every so often, they would have one, maybe two, go through each year. Not every year, but steady amount. So they did coach people through, and they did try to give people lots of preparation. So I was really lucky. There was resources available for me, teachers to coach me through the UCAS application, my personal statement, and give me a few practice interviews. I remember staying after school in the library and having practice interviews. So I'm very grateful for everybody who helped me. What I'm trying to say here is, firstly, it's incredibly important to feel like you have people in your corner. So talk to your parents, talk to your teachers, talk to your friends if possible. Tell them what's at stake and what you're going for, and try to enlist support, because you need a lot of it, and also try to be your own friend. And support manifests itself by doing lots of practice interviews. So not only my teachers, but my parents also sat me down, and I did interviews with my friends, and they ran me through. And here's the funny thing, 99.9% of the practice mock interview questions didn't come up in the actual interview. Questions like, what's your biggest weakness? What's the defining part of your character? If you could meet anybody living or dead, who would it be and why? How long is a piece of string? None of these questions actually came up in interview. The interviews were actually just kind of really nice conversations with people who enjoyed the subject. The question that did come up was, they did ask me why I wanted to study at Oxford. And this is really important, and you can feel free to steal my answers to the question, because this is a good one. Most people, when I consult, by the way, if you don't know, I do educational consulting. I have a huge success rate with getting students in. I get people into master's programs, I get people into undergraduate degrees, I get people Oxford, Cambridge, Harvard, Yale. So if you want consulting, please feel free to reach out and request. I take 3 to 4 students per month, so I might be able to help you. Now, so most people, when I say, why do you want to study at Oxford? They always go, well, it's Oxford. It's the greatest school in the world. That's not quite good enough. Oxford knows that they're good. They don't need you telling them that that's the only reason you want to study at them. That's not good. Here are my answers for why I wanted to study at Oxford. 1, the tutorial system, which uses a Socratic or Socratic methods of educational discourse. 2, the Bodleian Library, which has a copy of every book printed in England. 3, the prestigious alumni and the people I will meet. 4, the fascinating range of extracurricular activities, and 5, the beauty of Oxford. So anyway, the value of doing lots and lots of practice interviews isn't so that you have the answers prepared, it's just so you get comfortable talking about yourself and you're not too nervous. Which actually leads me on to my next tip, and that is, don't memorize answers. So many students stress themselves out before the interviews trying to cram and memorize a bunch of answers to questions that might come up, and of course they never do. And the thing is, the tutors can tell if you've memorized an answer. Believe it or not, they don't want to have a discussion or a conversation with a nervous robot. They've read your personal statement, they've got your test scores, and now they just want to talk to you and get to know you, which leads me on to my next tip, and that's to be a real person. I know that's a pretty tall order, and I know you're going to be nervous, but the primary motive and the aim for the tutors in doing the interview with you is to find out if they can work with you for 3+ years. They want to see how friendly you are. Are you fun? Because believe it or not, you will actually probably go to your tutors' houses and they'll cook dinner for you and you have little dinner parties together. They want to see how willing you are to contribute and what your ideas are like. Are you able to develop thoughts? Basically, they want to see if you're a good fit for them. So, how do you do this? My technique is to ask them questions, and this is something that 99% of students and interviewees never do. Most applicants are super nervous, they're self-absorbed, and they're just trying to pass the interview. Banish the thought that this is a test. There are no right answers. This is a conversation. It's a dialogue, and a dialogue means two people, right? So the way you start a dialogue and a conversation with another person is to ask them questions and be sincere about it. So here's an example of how that played out. In my interview, we were talking about a book called The Golden Bough by Sir James Fraser, and they said something to the effect of, this was James Methven, he went on to be my tutor in my first year, he was a lovely man. He said something to the effect of, oh, I've noticed you've got The Golden Bough as one of your chosen readings. And I immediately said, yes, have you read it? He said, yes, and he seemed pretty happy about that. And I said, what do you think of it? He said, I think that's a great piece of work. So I prompted him. I said, what was your favourite bit? Like, personally, my favourite bit was the bit about Apollo and the death of the agricultural god. And then he told me about all these chapters to do with magic and the supernatural. And then he said, well, okay, that's what I like, but why do you like the Apollo bit? And the conversation got really warm. I was still nervous. I was still trembling a bit. I was so shaky that I didn't even want to pick up the glass of water that the other... he wasn't a tutor. He worked for the OED, the Oxford English Dictionary. He was just observing. He didn't ask any questions, but he poured me a glass of water, and I thought, I can't actually pick up this glass of water. I'm too nervous. But the conversation felt warm, and it felt like we'd known each other for years. And I tell you what, I think that was due to me asking him questions. And I think James probably thought, wow, the students actually asked me questions. We're having a conversation. So I think he might have been an integral part of the decision-making process and said, well, I want Ben. In another interview, I noticed a picture on the wall, and this was just pure luck, but I noticed that the picture was of Yeats, the poet, and so I pointed and I said, is that Yeats? And they went, yeah. Do you know anything about Yeats? And I just started talking because luckily I'd read something by, I think it was Colin Wilson, I can't remember now, but I'd read something about Yeats and how he was kind of away with the fairies and stuff. So I made a bit of a joke, we talked about it, and that immediately warmed up that interview as well. And it was frosty to begin with because of what I was wearing, which I suppose kind of feeds into another tip, which is don't be afraid to stand out. Now, when I went to the interviews, my college was Oriel, it was quite tight-knit, but we were all kind of in the same dining hall. We all walk around the college grounds, which was quite small. Everybody was wearing a suit. Like, girls, guys, they were all wearing suits, and most of the suits were too big. They looked a bit stiff. And I said to myself, you know what? This is really, really stressful. I don't know when my interview is during the day. It could be first thing in the morning, and then there's another one late at night. I've kind of got to be on. I'm nervous. I'm not wearing a suit all day, and I've got to rush across town in a suit. I wore grey tracky bottoms. I wore a green jumper, and I had my ears pierced, and I had my hair spiked and straightened. It's a bit of a different style from what I look like now, obviously. And I was a smoker, obviously not bad. And that's how I went to the interviews. I turned up, and I remember with one of the interviews, they recoiled in their seats like I was some yob about to assault them. Stunk of smoke, wearing my trackies. They probably thought, who is this absolute yob coming in? And then I said, hey, you've got Yeats on the wall. And we had a chat. And that stuck out because I didn't look like the norm. I didn't blend in, and they were pleasantly surprised. So I think any reaction at first is a good one. You can turn hate into love. Love straight off the bat is also good, but you can't move much from neutrality very easily. So if you're aiming to blend in, that's not good. And to be honest, Oxford, my peers, they really were eccentric people. They all had piercings, they had tattoos, they had spiky green hair, shaved on one side, not shaved on the other. That was just the girls. They were all very eccentric. There was some punks, there was some goths, but obviously don't just do stuff because you think it will stand out. Just do stuff that's congruent with your personality. Don't be afraid to show that. My next tip is to read wide and deeply and develop lots of different disparate interests. Now, for my personal statement, my UCAS personal statement, even though I was applying for English language and literature, I spent most of it talking about my favourite actors, and I also talked about the latest diet that I was following, which was a cyclical ketogenic diet. If you're planning on doing a science or maths degree, make sure you read great works of literature. If you're doing a liberal arts degree, maybe learn a game of chess or learn to tax the other hemisphere of your brain. This is all valuable stuff. Here are some ideas for how you can do that and develop wide and varied interests. Do something physical, ideally every day, but at least a few times a week. Parkour, yoga, weightlifting, judo, hurling, anything that gets the blood pumping is good. Another idea is to watch classic movies, watch TED Talks, and watch interesting documentaries. I'll get you started. Classic movie recommendation, Citizen Kane. TED Talk recommendation, Your Body Language Shapes Who You Are by Amy Cuddy. Documentary recommendation, Jiro Dreams of Sushi. And also another tip is to do something cerebral but not related to your subject. Biochemistry students should read The Old Man in the Sea by Hemingway and maybe watch a Shakespeare play. English students should take Garry Kasparov's chess masterclass or maybe learn to build something with their hands. My next tip is to discuss and debate with everyone. Now this was a real shock. My background was basically one of the worst schools in the country. I came from Essex. I spent a lot of my time as an adolescent reading works by Schopenhauer and Nietzsche, and that's actually kind of how I got into Oxford, but I suppose that's a discussion for another day. And I've been watching classic movies like Guys and Dolls, going to the theatre. Luckily my dad was very supportive of that sort of thing. He'd take me to the theatre once a month, which is lovely. But I wasn't prepared to discuss these interests, and when I first got to Oxford, I realised every conversation was an intense debate. You'd be having breakfast and you've just rolled out of bed and people want an intense debate about the climate or intense debate about politics, and I just wasn't used to it. I remember in a science class in my first school, or my first secondary school, I was reading Thus Spoke Zarathustra by Friedrich Nietzsche, and my compadre to my right took the book, looked at it upside down, tried to pronounce the name and the word Zarathustra for about 2 minutes, and then dubbed me Shakespeare, which was actually a bit of a nickname that kind of stuck around, which, don't mind. Anyway, so when I arrived at Oxford, it was like arriving on another planet. And what I would do differently, although obviously it didn't harm me, but what I would definitely do differently if I was redoing it, not that I need to, but I would get used to debates and start consuming material that's got a built-in debate and learning to play devil's advocate and stuff. That would be really useful. Okay, my next tip is to be on when you need to and be off when you don't need to be on. What this means is this. When I turned up to Oxford, I turned up in a strange city, to me, because I had never been there before. The interview process is that interviews can be spread over many days, 2-3 days. They take place in different locations at different times, and it can be really disorienting. It can be a bit of an alienating affair. I was assigned a random room, a dorm room, in order to sleep there. And I was shown a bulletin board in the JCR, the junior common room, the common area. And they said that something like, I think it was 30 minutes or an hour before each interview. It might have been a bit longer, but they said very shortly before your interview takes place, you'll get the notification. So make sure you keep checking in every day. So I had one interview that was in the morning, and then I was checking in every day, every like 30 minutes, every hour, going down and down and down and down. Not there, until end of the day, bloody 9 o'clock at night, boom, and then you've got to get all the way across town in an unfamiliar city and be on and ready to discuss. It's stressful. And after my first interview in the morning, I remember passing out face down on the bed. But of course, you need to be on at the end of the day, right? So you don't know when you need to be on. All you know is that when the time comes, you need to be on. So what I did is I bought some Pro Plus, they're caffeine pills. I've never taken them again since, so this isn't medical advice. I'm not advising it at all. I don't think they're particularly good. But when I checked the bulletin board and I knew my time was about to come, I popped the pills and got myself across town. By the time I got to the other end of town, by the way, I went to Oriel and one of my interviews was at St John's, that's on the other side of the Oxford city centre. By the time I got there and arrived, the caffeine had started kicking in, so that was great. And then by the time the interview was over, I collapsed again. Great, worked out for me. Okay, another tip is to make sure you know what's involved ahead of time. Now, I knew that one of my interviews would involve me turning up and I get given an unseen extract and I have to look at it for 20 minutes and then comment on it. Because I knew that was what was involved, I spent a lot of practice printing off unseen extracts and then preparing to like annotate them and stuff. If you want to learn how to effectively annotate, by the way, if you go over to the Hardcore Literature YouTube channel, I have a good, relatively popular video on how to annotate your books. Really useful. I'd highly recommend you watch that one. It's about 40 minutes, so you might need to break it up. But so I knew that, and then I knew how to prepare. And I'd say this is obviously going to be different for whatever your subject is, but regardless, there'll be lots of talking. Just double or triple or even quadruple check exactly what the interview looks like and be prepared for it. Visualize it, go through it in your mind so there's no funny surprises. Okay, my last tip, and this is the most important but perhaps the most difficult one, and that is to relax, or at least try to relax. A lot of people will try to cram or pull an all-nighter, but I'd say that if you're running off sleep deprivation or you're not getting enough sleep, then you're not going to feel in control of your life. You're not going to feel in control of the interview process, or at least you're not going to feel like you can put your best foot forward. My temperament's naturally inclined to be lazy, although I have developed into a bit of a type A workaholic. But I found it hard to switch off. I remember this distinctly. I wanted to keep reading over my notes and different things I want to talk about, but I really would say just prepare in advance as you can, as possible. And when you get to the actual interview time, when you're not in the interviews, just try and chill. Sure, read, call a friend, lounge about, watch some TV or whatever, wander the city, breathe, do some exercise if possible. Just try and relax. That's really important. Here are my suggestions for how to relax, and these are, as far as I'm concerned, non-debatable. The first one is to turn off your screens around 2 hours before bedtime. Like I said, call a friend, watch a movie, take a bath, just chill, read a book, but turn off the brain well before bed so that you can get some quality sleep. That's the most important thing. That's also a good thing to keep in mind when it comes to exams. Another tip is to get 8 hours minimum. I mean, sure, people go, oh, I can only need 6, I only need 7. You might only need 6, or you might be able to operate on 5. But most people don't thrive. The people who do are in the minority, and you're not likely to be in the minority. 8 is a solid minimum. Try to do it. If you can get more, perfect, amazing. Me personally today, I'm closer to 30 than I'm not a teenager anymore. I get anywhere from 9 to 11 hours a night. And that makes me way more productive, way more optimistic. My general state of being is really happy. I get a lot more done, and I'm happier and healthier because of it. Get as much sleep as possible, especially in the run-up to interviews. My next tip is to eat well. We can run into what a perfect diet looks like for academic performance. I've got an entire course on that coming out. So if you're interested in that, join the newsletter, my daily newsletter. There's a link in the description below. It's called How to Work Out and Eat for Academic Performance. But make sure you eat good stuff. Stay away from junk and eat healthy. Eat nice stuff, but eat healthy. Maybe give yourself a little reward, but try not to eat too much junky stuff. Eat a balanced meal with good lean protein, healthy fats, fish oil's good, fruit and vegetables. You know this stuff. But again, like I said, we can go into it if you want to join the course. I'll let you know when that comes out. Another tip is to limit caffeine consumption. Like I said, I use Pro Plus pills, so it sounds like I'm being a bit of a hypocrite, and I do like a coffee. But I'd say with coffee, it can also make you anxious and jittery. So if you don't have a dependency, or you don't need a lot of coffee anyway, I'd say don't choose now to start experimenting wildly with coffee. And if you do have coffee, try and balance it out with some green tea. I like Japanese green teas. If you're interested, I can give you recommendations of specific ones. But the L-theanine in green tea balances out the caffeine, so you don't get jitters and you don't get a crash. So try not to do too many things that ramp your anxiety up, because you want to be nice, calm, collected, and cool for the Oxford interview process. Anyway, so those are some tips based on my personal experience, based on coaching people over the years in how to get into Oxford. These obviously apply to any elite university interview process or an interview process for anything high stakes. I hope those help. If you want more personal, tailored advice, please reach out to me, ben@benjaminmcavoy.com, MCEVOY. Put request for consultation, and I'll be more than happy to help you. Thank you very much for watching this video. I wish you all the very best luck. I hope you get in. If you found this video helpful, I'll be really grateful if you hit the like button and subscribe, because that tells me to keep making more videos. Thank you very much, and have a lovely day.